Attorney Tharpe. I'm here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. Go ahead and put your questions in the comments now. I'm here to answer your questions. I'm going to try to keep my part short so I can jump to some of your questions. But I do want to answer this question. What makes a VAWA successful? Now, there are different parts, pieces to a VAWA petition that is required to succeed, and it's so essential to make sure that each of these considerations are covered before filing a VAWA and even during the process. Now, the number one thing is you have to make sure you meet all the requirements of VAWA. Now, VAWA is not an alternative to, it's not simply an alternative to applying without your spouse. Yes, spouse or relative. Now, yes, it is there as an option and it is there to empower you when needed. However, it doesn't mean that you get to apply for this just because you don't want to apply with your spouse. Your spouse or your relative, your need to apply without your spouse or relative your need to apply without them has to be based on the fact that you're being mistreated by that spouse, by that parent, or by that adult citizen child. And they don't necessarily have to refuse, but a part of refusing, right, refusing to apply for your green card or helping you to apply is part of the mistreatment. Now, this is where I say it's so essential to apply for this before thinking about applying with your spouse or relative. The reason being, once you have submitted the petition to once you've submitted the petition for the marriage-based process, and now you're going through it, and your spouse is now sabotaging you. They may be threatening to call ICE on your immigration. They may be threatening to withdraw the letter. They may show up to the interview and sign a statement or tell them a bunch of baloney that the officers do accept as like a confession, that they're only helping you, that this marriage was never real, they don't really know you, they're just trying to help you out. And when you get to the point where the spouse is now sabotaging your process, it means that your case is officially more complicated, because now, before you could have even submitted the VAWA petition, this spouse or this relative beat you to it, and they're putting things on the record that will now be considered as part of the overall VAWA application process. So it's important that you protect your interest by submitting your VAWA application before you petition. I mean, now, if you're going through the petition process, you didn't expect this to happen. Of course, who expects their spouse to do this? Maybe you didn't see the red flags until you actually enter the process with your spouse. There is still the process of VAWA. There's still the option of VAWA, but you just have to keep into consideration that now, with a pending petition, with a spouse who's volatile, who is out to sabotage your process, your case can get more complicated. And as a result of that, they may take a longer time to look into your application. They may take a longer time to process it, because now they have different issues in the back end. They're not disclosing this to any outside parties. They're not calling your spouse or relative to disclose that you've applied for VAWA. But now they have to look at what's in front of them to determine whether your VAWA petition is credible. So my number one tip here is, what makes a VAWA application successful is what you do before you even apply. And it's look at your circumstances, look at the red flags. Don't, take yourself out of denial, and look at the circumstances in front of you to determine whether you should pursue one of the two options. whether you should pursue it with your spouse, knowing the risk involved with a spouse like this. And I'm talking about spouses that are mistreating you, that are threatening the immigration process, threatening to withdraw the papers. If you know that the type of spouse you have, they will do that, then you should think about VAWA, right? VAWA, once you apply, you start from scratch with a process on your own. It means you avoid the risk of this spouse having some sort of power to have a say, right? By sabotaging you, by withdrawing the paperwork. So that's the first thing, is make that decision from now so that you don't have to, you're protected, because once you file for VAWA, before the spouse can even intentionally sabotage you, then that means that the immigration can't just take what they say without some sort of solid proof that it's true, what they're saying is true. So then it puts you in a position, a protected position, where they are now on, it's on record, you're being mistreated. And so when the spouse calls to say this or say that, or if they call ICE, you already have something on file saying you're filing because this spouse is doing this kind of thing to you. So now the next thing is choosing representation. So many times I have consulted with individuals who chose to try to do the VAWA themselves or try to do it on the cheap. And so they chose either a consultant or an attorney who said they could file the VAWA for cheap, and messed up their process. And once a VAWA application goes in, remember, you are putting a ton of stuff on record. You're submitting statements under penalty of perjury that will stick. So when you are submitting these documents, or there are mistakes that are being made, there's information that you did not submit the first time around, then it gets difficult to move forward with your process or even get an approval, because now the mistakes have already been done. You can possibly refile, but refiling means that you're looking at explaining why you're submitting new information. It takes a lot more effort to explain your position, right? So preparation is key, and a part of preparing is making sure that you have the right representation. First of all, if an attorney, I'll tell you one red flag. If you are talking to an attorney and they're telling you, or attorney, and I do not recommend you do this through a consultant. Never do this through a consultant, because sometimes the consultants will even tell you you can apply for VAWA and maybe you don't even qualify. And that can turn into a bigger problem for you in the future. So always seek representation from an experienced, qualified attorney. And keep in mind that not every immigration attorney, understands the intricacies of VAWA. Some attorneys will even tell you you don't qualify for VAWA because you didn't call the police, because they don't understand the requirements. And most people, when they think Violence Against Women's Act, they think it doesn't go for men, and you had to call the police. There had to be physical violence involved, and none of that is true. So some attorneys will turn you away and say you don't even qualify for it. So make sure that you get a qualified, experienced immigration attorney. Now, one red flag is when you are hiring an attorney, if they're telling you that you're going to do, they're basically, you hired them and they're basically pushing papers and telling you, they're giving you very little guidance as to what's required in the application. That's where you have to stop. If you don't feel like this attorney is holding your hands through this process, guiding you through the process, making sure that you're feeling represented, then definitely go ahead and seek another attorney. I'm just gonna say it plain as simple as that, because when you are pushed to, when the attorney, you hire the attorney and they're just telling you to do stuff, certain things on your own, that is a disaster. So, for example, if you are filling out, you're doing your declaration, and your declaration, it is like testimony. So you have to make sure that it's accurate. You have to make sure that it is detailed enough because it will be accepted as evidence. And if you don't have guidance as to what kind of information the officer needs to to qualify you for VAWA, you may write a statement that's not that great, not that detailed, and you will lose the chance to have an approved petition, an approved VAWA petition. So, so important that this attorney they make, and that's what I do with my representation. I guide my clients step by step through the process. I don't give my clients homework to do. We sit down and I listen to what they have to say. I ask them the questions that matter in their declaration to help them to put together a solid declaration, right? Because, for example, if I, as the attorney, said, go write your declaration and just talk about all the bad things that happened in your relationship, you may not talk about the fact that your marriage was bona fide, right? That you're, how you met, what you did together, the circumstances surrounding your marriage, right? You may just touch on what was bad about the marriage but not talk about any of those other aspects. And guess what? That's also a requirement. If they don't just want to see mistreatment, but they also want to see that your marriage was bona fide and real. So that's a part of the declaration process as well, in addition to presenting other evidence. And then talking about your good moral character and providing evidence of good moral character. And then you may not, when you're putting your declaration together, your statement together, you may not think about every single thing that occurred, or you may not know what incidents qualifies you for this. So you may just say in a nutshell, I met my spouse here, we got married here, and they mistreated me. They called me some names and made me feel bad. And if that's your statement, it's not gonna fly. It has to be sufficiently detailed to be accepted as evidence, and it has to be believable. So that means that now, when I say it has to be believable, I'm not saying go create a fantasy. I'm saying you have to put sufficient details for the officer to look at the credibility of your statement. Similar to when you're testifying in court, you're on the stand, and if if the judge does not find your testimony credible, then there could be an order against you, right? It's similar here in that the officer is like the judge, the officers like the jury, and they're evaluating these facts to determine whether you qualify. And if you don't give them enough detail, they may very well think you don't qualify. So this is very important. And then there's also other requirements that you have to show: that you've resided with your spouse, for example, that you have at some point resided with your relative, that you have the good faith part. So similar to when you're applying for marriage through the marriage-based process, you have to show that it was bona fide. Guess what? That is still a requirement here, a very important requirement, because they want to make sure that there's no fraud involved. And then you do have to take the special steps to show your good moral character. In cases where maybe you've had an arrest, you have to also show that despite the arrest or the conviction, you're still a person of good moral character. So the takeaway here is what makes a VAWA case successful is meeting the requirements, and the requirements can be tricky, right? They can be tricky, and you need the guidance to get you through those requirements. So tip one: before you even apply for any immigration documents, think about whether the marriage-based process is the right process for you, or whether the VAWA process is right for you. That way, if you're not complicating your case by applying through marriage and then now you have to run and apply for VAWA and worry about what the spouse is doing to sabotage the marriage-based process, but that you can put yourself in a protected situation through the VAWA process. The other thing is preparation. Through preparation through your attorney, an attorney, not a notario, not a consultant, an attorney, right? And the attorney should give you the legal advice and guidance you need to properly present the evidence, because you could have just one shot at this. And by if you miss that one shot, it's going to get a lot nastier and it's going to be an uglier process. And then last is putting your evidence together, making sure that you're meeting each and every requirement. Now, it's not saying you need a ton of evidence, a ton of paperwork, but you have to understand what will be the right evidence based on your circumstances, because you could qualify for relief, for this type of relief based on verbal, mental, extreme cruelty, based on physical, but physical isn't required. The police aren't required to be involved. Reporting it isn't required to be involved. But you have to make sure that in addition to that requirement, that you're meeting the other requirements as well. And I, as the attorney, we talk about my client situation, and then we determine what the best credible evidence is for their situation, because every situation is different. All right. So let me go ahead and I'm going to answer some questions here quickly. Let's see. Okay, so now when we're talking about the prima facie, so here got a second waiver letter. I think that's VAWA letter that expired in December. What will happen after? So I think this what you're talking about is the prima facie determination letter. And with the prima facie determination letter, it is automatically issued so when it's expired, they issue another one. So they'll keep issuing this until they make a decision. Um, what can I do if I can't find a joint sponsor? So unfortunately, if a joint sponsor is required and you don't have any alternatives, then they're not going to approve that affidavit of support. So you have to either find a joint sponsor or work on changing your circumstances so you can meet the requirements of the affidavit of support. So mine said he's going to cancel the marriage because he doesn't want to help. So whenever they're threatening to cancel, there's a good chance here that you may qualify for VAWA. Now, I have to really understand the facts here, though. Is it that he's saying, I just don't have feelings anymore, I want a divorce? That's not necessarily doesn't equate to mistreatment, but if he's saying it in retaliation, in to get you to comply with something he wants, then that could qualify you for VAWA here. So the best thing you can do for yourself is schedule a consultation so we can talk about your situation and determine whether this will be right for you. My VAWA got approved. Congrats. And I want to file for the green card, but I was arrested by police for using international driver's license to drive, and I'm going to court. Will this affect my case? I highly suggest you get legal advice. Whenever it comes on to arrest or criminal matters, it's best you get legal advice. Now, normally, an arrest for driving without driver's license does not equate to inadmissibility. However, I would want to get all the details before concluding that in your case, and this is where the personalized consultation is going to be very, very important. Um, so keep in mind that, driving with an international driver's license does not mean that it could be inadmissible, but this is where it's important to get legal advice. Can your citizen husband petition for your green card and you add your 19-year-old to your petition? No. So you're not allowed to add people to the petition. Can a consultant submit documents to USCIS on your behalf without you signing any form of document? Is that valid? Not usually. No, usually, yes, they can, but they will not. The USCIS will not see them as a representative. And keep in mind that they do have consultants that they are given specific permission from the immigration to represent clients. They have consultants that they just know, they say they know a lot about the paperwork. Those people, they can mail the petition to immigration, but they can't represent you. Immigration will not communicate with them directly as your representative. I did a police record last year. You think a new one? It depends on, whether it's expiring. Now with the COVID emergency ending, they may bring that back to a year. So it used to be a year for the police the certificates to expire, but now they changed it to 2 years, even though the certificates, for example, in Jamaica says 1 year. The immigration, they put it at 2 years. However, just make sure if you're represented by an attorney that you check with your attorney as to whether you're going to need a new one for the interview. All right, so that's going to be it for me today. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining me on this chat. I will be back tomorrow to talk about around lunchtime to talk about a topic, but keep these tips in mind. It's so essential because with VAWA, it's one of those things, and with any application, by the way, it's one of those things where if you submit the wrong kinds of information, it gets a lot harder and complicated for you in the future. So before you submit anything, evaluate your options. If you see red flags in your spouse, in your parent, in your citizen adult child, and you don't think this is going to be successful, which I usually can predict that myself when I talk to individuals, VAWA could be an option for you to start from the beginning. So you're not having to contend with someone who's going to sabotage you. All right, if you'd like to get in touch, go to the link in the profile or click on the link in the profile page of Instagram, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Go into the description of the video, you'll see the link. You can schedule your own appointment, or you can call, or you can go to the website. And when you go to the website, you'll see our phone number, contact form. So many ways to get in touch with us. So get in touch, schedule an appointment. My schedule is filling up, so make sure you get on it very quickly so we can get to a solution for you quickly as well. Have a good one. I'll see you tomorrow.